here. So I would like to start this presentation by letting you know that most of the information presented will be familiar or somewhat familiar to you. Hopefully, some of the information will be new, interesting, or fun. My goal was to organize it in a way that will be easy to remember and therefore apply in your practice. So let's just start with the definition. That's Oxford Dictionary. Self-care is the practice of taking action to preserve or improve one's own health, and the practice of taking an active role in protecting one's own well-being and happiness, in particular during periods of stress. What I would like to add here is to remember that when you price your sessions, you want to make sure that part of that revenue is dedicated towards investing in your own health and well-being. You serve your clients best when you are in the best shape that you can be, both physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. So these are the 4 aspects that we will address. So we will start with the physical aspect. Okay, that's kind of almost self-evident. For a good physical care, we need a good diet, a certain amount of exercise, and a really good sleep. Before I go into diet, and I promise I won't give diet advice, I will come from a different angle, I would like to address a little bit the idea of water. So for proper metabolism, a normal human body requires about 2 to 3 liters, which is 64 to 96 ounces of water. Coffee, tea, and other beverages count towards water intake. So the reason I do want to mention this is because we are constantly told to drink water, stay hydrated, make it seem like we, in order to be healthy, we really need to drink a lot of water, and that's not the case. So an average of 2 to 3 liters, obviously, if it's really hot or if you work out, you might need to drink a little bit more. So what happens if we drink too much water? Believe it or not, there is something called water intoxication known as hyponatremia. Basically, if you drink more water than your body is able to eliminate, which is your kidneys can get rid of excess water at about the rate of 32 ounces and 1 liter per hour. So it is safe to say that if you drink not more than 32 ounces, 1 liter per hour, you will take good care of your kidneys. And especially if you drink it really fast, hyponatremia, it's a life-threatening condition, because what's happening if you drink too much water and your kidneys cannot eliminate it, basically the sodium content of your blood becomes diluted. And we do need a particular ratio of sodium content in our blood, because that's what keeps our body in, keeps the blood pressure under control, and as well it serves our nerves and muscles. I really want to emphasize the idea of creating a ritual, and I will let you know what it means creating a ritual for me. So basically, when I talk about ritual, I mean focused awareness with positive intention. I cannot emphasize more, as an energy healer, you need to create and use any opportunities that you have during the day to fill both your body, your mind, and your heart with positive emotion and positive intent. So creating a ritual basically is focused awareness with positive intention. And that's one way to charge your water. So just taking even few seconds. We tend to go so mechanical in our life, like we drink water, eat without really paying attention. So I do really emphasize that paying attention creates a really good habit. Stopping even for 10 seconds, bringing in the awareness, bringing in the positive intention makes a huge difference. Probably most of you have heard of the Japanese researcher Masaru Emoto, who conducted experiments on water molecules. He was exposing water in glasses to various words, pictures, or music, and then freezing it and examining the crystal aesthetic properties with microscopic photography. So these experiments really show that human thought and intention can physically alter the water molecules. And obviously, when the water was exposed to very beautiful words like peace and love, the crystals were showing beautiful, harmonious structures. And when they were exposed to hate or jealousy, they would show a really random pattern and not a very pleasing one to the eye. Now, let's not forget, as we all know, that we are mostly water. For an adult, it's more than 60%, but our brains and our hearts are actually around 70% water. So being able to charge that water regularly and during the day with positive intent does make a huge difference in the long run. So I do want to encourage you to consider that and pay attention to it. Now, moving on. I like to add a lot of interesting fun facts. So this is a fun fact about water. If ice did not float, life underwater would be impossible. Hope this sounds interesting to most of you. I don't know if you are aware or not, but if ice did not float, then most of aquatic plants and animals would not make it throughout the winter. So ice is 9% less dense than water. And when it floats, it forms these pockets of air that help insulate the water so it does not freeze solid. As ice melts in the spring, it absorbs heat and it slowly changes from ice to water. This gradual process also is protecting the aquatic plants and animals from a sudden increase in temperature. Now, something fun, a jellyfish and a cucumber are each 95% water. Let's move on to diet. There is no one diet fits all. It's very clear to us that there have been so many different diets that we were told that are the right diet, but that is not the case because we are all slightly different, both in terms of biochemically and also genetically. So then how do we know if what we do works or not? So one way to know, and this is the angle that I'm taking, one important thing to pay attention because you want to have good health is pay attention if your energy is good during the day, relatively steady. Also, after eating, you do not feel bloating, excessive fatigue, or sleepiness, increased pain, or allergic reaction. Because you do not want to feel bloated. You don't want to feel super sleepy when you have to basically give a session to a client. And definitely you don't want to have an allergic reactions. So if you do notice any of these things, I would encourage you to address them sooner rather than later. One way is to keep a journal and see if certain foods are more problematic than others. You can obviously see a nutritionist and figure out maybe there's something to do with the gut microbiome. And a general rule is trying to not eat for 3 to 4 hours before bedtime. And obviously, because we are in AD here, we can use AD tools to form a healthy relationship with food and eating habits. We have practice groups, so we can definitely address that to help us to stay as healthy and as vibrant as we can. And last but not least, again, create a ritual around food. Pause for a little bit, charge it, give yourself and the food positive energy, and I feel that that always helps. So now fun facts about food. So I don't know how many of you might have known or not that figs are not fruits. They are actually flowers. They are basically inverted flowers. Fig trees have flowers that bloom inside the pod, which then matures them into the fruit we eat. Broccoli contains more protein than steak. Indeed, according to percent of calories from protein, broccoli contains more. But technically speaking, you would need to eat about 2.5 pounds of broccoli to get the same amount of protein as in 3.5 ounces of ribeye steak. So if you do consider switching to plant-based protein, keep that in mind. Okay, honey is basically bee vomit. And now, before you go and think, oh, I'm not gonna have honey ever again, let me explain a little bit. The notion that honey is bee vomit comes from the fact that bees chew and spit up nectar before it is made into honey. In the bee's defense, it's important to mention that the bees have two stomachs. One where they hold the nectar that becomes honey, and the other is used for their own digestive needs. So even though they chew and spit the honey, it is not being mixed with their own digestive fluids. Now let's go to exercise. The exercise that you enjoy and willing to do is the right exercise. I'm just wondering if any of you have any idea what is the healthy amount of exercise that is recommended for an adult. Anyone can take a guess, maybe write in the chat. Okay, doesn't look like anyone is trying to guess. Okay, so here we go. Oh, here, 30 minutes, 2-3 times a week, 45 minutes per day. Okay, there we go. So thank you. Well, according to both Health Canada and NHS, it is at least 2.5 hours of moderate intensity activity, which is about 150 minutes, or 75 minutes of vigorous exercise a week. If we do the math here, it would mean that about 20 minutes a day of moderate intensity activity and about 10 of vigorous exercise. The reason I chose to mention this is because we tend to be in two categories. One, in which we think that we don't exercise enough, even though we walk and do other forms, maybe we dance, and we think that's not enough. And the other category, we over-exercise. We think that an hour a day at the gym does us good. Over-exercising, actually, it's depleting our body, especially as we age. Now let's see what does actually mean moderate intensity activity. So heart rate is raising, you feel warmer, you can talk but not sing. Examples would be brisk walking, dancing, rollerblading. Vigorous intensity exercise, you breathe hard and fast and cannot say more than a few words without catching your breath, like running, swimming, martial arts. So I hope that that gives you a bit more clarity, and maybe it puts you finally, you say, oh, wow, I am not doing that bad, or wow, now I know that I can do it with a lot less. Obviously, if you intend to, or you have some sort of fitness goals, like a six-pack or something, you will need to exercise more than this, but this is just strictly to keep your body in a healthy state. Now create a ritual around exercising, again, focus attention, bringing positive attitude towards exercise. I personally have never been a fan of gyms, so I like to bounce on a trampoline. It gives me a lot of joy. It makes me feel like a child. So when I do it, I feel I allow all my body to receive that innocence and the joy that only a child feels when they start bouncing. And I also am a little bit silly. I don't really follow a particular exercise. So I would say, if you like dancing, go dance, be a bit silly in the way you move. It always helps to bring your mood and your ability to stay uplifted. I do emphasize that because we do, as energy practitioners, we do encounter people's problems, people's blocks. So the more we stay in a positive and uplifted state, the more we find reasons to do so, the better it is. So fun facts about exercise, which you might want to keep in mind: balancing on one leg for 10 seconds may predict likelihood of living or dying. That sounds very unusual, so maybe some balancing exercises, but this is actually a peer-reviewed study conducted by Brazilian researcher Dr. Claudio Gil Soares de Araújo, determined that a person's balance ability can be preserved into the 6th decade of one's life, meaning it's more of a broad indicator of life expectancy across age ranges than aerobic fitness, flexibility, or muscle strength. And one more, climbing 3 flights of stairs as fast as you can, about 60 steps, 3 times a day can be an effective workout. So if you are relatively healthy, 60 steps would take you only about 20 seconds to maybe 45 seconds. So that would make this total per day put it about 1 minute, maybe a minute and a half or so. And let's see, this is again a study. Let's see what happens. So this study was conducted at McMaster University, which is in Hamilton, Ontario. And it concluded that after 6 weeks, the participants have increased their aerobic power by 5%, and they also showed improvement in leg power. So you might think 5% is not that much, but for about a minute and a half a day, I think it's quite a bit. So sleep. As we all know, the recommended sleep time is about 7 to 9 hours a night. Some people can get away with a little bit less, other people need a little bit more. But the baseline is ultimately, are you waking up refreshed and energized? I would say between the 3, diet, exercise, and sleep, pay really close attention and make sure you have a good night's sleep. If you cannot, you might want to reduce blue light exposure. These are few basic things. Probably you guys are all aware of it. It's just good to mention. Do not eat 3 to 4 hours before bed. Do not consume caffeine late in the day. And consider sleep supplements like melatonin, 5-HTP, L-tryptophan, valerian root, L-theanine, or magnesium. Now, most likely all of you are aware that sleep is super important. And if you can cheat a bit on your exercise or maybe diet, here and there, having a good sleep will really help your body and your brain greatly. So because the brain stores new information and gets rid of toxins while you sleep, nerve cells communicate and reorganize. The body repairs cells, restores energy, and releases molecules like hormones and proteins. So I hope I made this quite relevant, that please pay attention to your sleep. Now, fun facts about sleep. Humans spend an average of 6 years of their life dreaming. So if anyone ever calls you a dreamer, you might want to mention this fun fact. If you have a partner that snores, you are losing an average of 1 hour of sleep per night and being woken up 20 times. Koalas can sleep for up to 20 hours a day. So now we are at the end of our physical self-care. We are moving on into spiritual and emotional and mental. Oh, I'd like to mention a bit biohacking before we move on. If you are really interested in how to help your body get to the next level and be even healthier or even to perform even better, consider looking into biohacking. Biohacking is also known as human augmentation or human enhancement. Is a do-it-yourself biology aimed at improving performance, health, and well-being through strategic interventions. So a book that I can recommend has come out not that long ago. It's Dave Asprey's Smarter, Not Harder. You will find a lot of good information on how to upgrade your own biology. So here we are, spiritual, emotional, mental, and physical. I created this image as a symbol for how our being looks like when the spiritual, emotional, and mental and physical aspects are in harmony. So now let's see what might this be. Well, it doesn't look like anyone can take a guess here. Doesn't look very pleasing. Looks like there's not much of the spiritual left. The emotional is a little bit frazzled. The mental might be a brain fog and so on. And also, physical, it's not that great. Well, what we call this in mental health is the state of burnout. So the reason I am coming from this angle is because probably it is what I consider extremely important is to pay attention to sign of burnout. Some of these signs might appear here and there, but they are usually more, if they appear occasionally, they are usually just a sign that maybe you didn't sleep well, maybe you've been slightly more stressed, or something might going on in your health. But if it continues, that's really a sign that you need to really address. So address the issue. So the burnout is basically an exhaustion of physical or emotional strength or motivation, usually as a result of prolonged stress or frustration. Happens a lot more and a lot faster in professions that involve direct care of others. Studies estimate that anywhere between 21% and 61% of mental health practitioners experience signs of burnout. So now, what are the signs of burnout that you want to pay attention to? Okay. One is emotional exhaustion and fatigue. So the way I define emotional exhaustion is basically you feel easily overwhelmed by the slightest challenge. So if you find yourself overwhelmed by something that you might have never been stressed about before, that's something to pay attention to. Also, fatigue. Fatigue, if it's occasional, it's okay, you recover. If it happens over a long period of time, it definitely needs to be addressed. It can also, some physical sign can also be constant headache, some GI distress can also be part and signs of burnout. The other really important sign is lack of compassion for clients. How does that actually look like in practice? Basically, it's when you feel that you have a hard time listening to people's problems in their blocks. You feel like, oh my God, one more, here he goes, here he complains, oh my God. So once again, this doesn't sound like a big deal. Let's say the client comes and say they are concerned about their dog, and you're like, wow, is this really that big of a deal? So when you find yourself thinking that way, it's definitely a sign that something is going on, and you might want to address. The other one is depersonalization. Depersonalization doesn't happen quite as much, but it can in private practice. But it's basically when you don't think of your clients and you don't look forward helping them with their issues. You are thinking of them more like numbers in your bank account, thinking of, oh, I need this many more clients and then I can do this. So that is also a sign of burnout. And the sense of lack of meaning in career or personal work. So this might sound like, oh, I don't know, I don't feel like I am making really a difference. I mean, my client makes some progress, but not that big. And I don't know, the world looks so I don't even know what to think about it. I can't think, I don't think I'm making a difference. I think the world is still not gonna ultimately go anywhere. I am just tired of it all. So when you hear yourself talk that way, just think that this would be a sign of burnout, and you actually, again, want to look at it and want to address it, because you do want to be as present and as compassionate with your clients at all times. Now, what is why this can also happen? Burnout can also happen and be accelerated by overwhelming personal situation, divorce, death in family, caring for demanding aging parents, chronic health issues. So sometimes you might find yourself thinking that way simply because you are overwhelmed. Like a divorce is really a life-changing event. It can bring up all kinds of emotions, all kinds of financial situation, the same with that in family. So if you find yourself thinking that way and you just had a divorce or a death in family, it is normal. You do still want to address it, but be aware that this can happen when you feel personally overwhelmed. So what is the solution? Here it is. If today you live with only this, I would say I am happy. That means I gave you the key to being a good therapist. Therapists need therapy. And I cannot really emphasize this more than what I'm already doing. And when I'm saying therapists need therapy, I don't mean that you need therapy just because, you know, your spouse died or because, you know, your child is very sick. You need therapy often just to fine-tune yourself. You also need personal growth. You also need awareness of your own journey. Basically, the more you grow and the more aware you are and the more therapy you do. And here in AD, we really have an amazing opportunity. AD is a very effective method. We can exchange healings in our session, in our practice groups. We can also call on some of the our colleagues to help us. Obviously, if your need is of physical nature, you do want, maybe you do an exchange with a physiotherapist, or make sure that whatever fees you charge, part of it can be dedicated, as I said in the beginning, towards your own care. So please, if I am to say about how often would you want to address your own therapy needs, I would say if you want to stay in top shape, once a week. Twice a week, I would recommend it, at the least once a month. Now, when you do, what are the areas, and this is a very classical counseling approach, what are the areas where people have the most issues can arise? There's 3 areas, and we will discuss the 3 of them, and they somewhat correspond to the spiritual, mental, and emotional areas. So basically, where we tend to have a lot of issues are, 1, in our relationship with source or God or universe. So the second one is in our relationship and our image of self, or in this case, as self as practitioners. And the third one is in our relationship with others. So our relationship with others tend to be on the emotional side, because that's where we are mostly emotionally challenged. And how we think about ourselves, that's also very important. Again, it corresponds more to the mental level. So let's look a little bit and give some examples on each. So we do have basically, let me just move myself a little bit lower. In AD, we have one-on-one healing, and that's an amazing tool. And I would say use it, and use it maybe once a month, go over tests, just see if anything came up or not. If it does, address it. Why? I personally believe that the relationship with a creator is one of the most important ones. And why, I will explain. If you trust the creator, you would trust yourself more as a practitioner. You would also trust your own life. That's why I say, do you trust creator? Do you feel at peace, in harmony with your life? Do you feel guided, protected? Do you have a strong connection to source? Do you blame the universe for the injustice in your life or the world? So the stronger and the more clear your connection is, the better of a practitioner you can be, because then you trust that you are guided and you are protected, and you are able to feel more at peace and less worried about how a session went. So in AD, we have this amazing tool, which is I have creator's perspective on ... I would really suggest if you can use that as often as possible in your everyday life. You have creator perspective definitely before a session, creator perspective on your client, creator perspective on you as a practitioner. You want to maybe in your everyday life, you go for a coffee with a friend, you have creator's perspective on that meeting, you have creator's perspective on your friend. If you can keep this as a default, it's really, really helpful. Just try it out. The other one that I haven't included here is definitely support. Give yourself support before a session, during the session. You can just set it that it happens during the session. Give your client support. Give the friends and people that are close to you support regularly. That's not only going to help them, it's going to help you put yourself in a state of really positive, loving nature in which you are really there for both your loved ones and your clients. So now, relationship with yourself, especially as a practitioner. Now, how do you feel about yourself as a practitioner? Do you feel good about your gifts and skills and your ability to share them? Do you trust your intuition reading? What is really, really important is to be able to acknowledge what went well and what can be improved in a session. None of us are perfect. We can all make certain misjudgments at times, maybe. So if you can stop yourself, one thing that happens to many practitioners, they really, really kind of obsess after the session has happened. This didn't go well. This, I could have done that. I could have done the other thing. So if you can help prevent that, that would be awesome. You don't want to take it home. You don't want to take it in your own life. You want to leave it behind. You do want, though, to acknowledge what went well. I'm sure some things went well in no matter what session you gave, even if it doesn't feel like that. And also, it's good to acknowledge what can improve. Now, obviously, again, we have amazing tools in AD here. We can address our insecurities and doubts easily. So, trust your readings. That's another thing that I would like you to keep in mind. So what do I mean by trust your reading? I am one of the practitioners that believes that when you do a reading, you want to share with your client. So let's say something unusual, you have a reading or an image comes up, I would always suggest share it, even if it sounds odd, but do leave the interpretation to your client first. If the client says no, then you might give them an interpretation. So let's give you an example. So one time I was giving a session to a person that was addressing their fear of success. And during the session, I noticed these blue lights that were circling around her lungs. And I really didn't know what to make of it because I didn't think, I was trying in my head, oh, lungs, do they go with insecurity? Didn't really seem to. Yes, somewhat fear from Chinese medicine perspective. So all of these things were going in my head. But then I decided to share it. So I share with the client, look, I'm not sure, this might or might not belong to the issue that we are working with, but this is what I see. What do you think? What do you think this might be? And says, oh, I know, I have had a really bad cold and I kept feeling that my lungs were burning in the last few days. And now I feel them really, really cool down. So I guess that energy transferred into cooling down her lungs, even though I had no idea that she had that issue. So I would say, I would encourage, share it and be humble, let the client interpret. If the client cannot come up with anything, then I would say just leave it. Leave it and move on to other things, because it's not really important for you to be right. It's never important. It's the client is right because they are the ones. Because if you impose on them your ideas, they might go along with it, but they will not come back. I can guarantee that. Okay. Last but not least, your relationship with others, especially your clients, because we are addressing here the idea of the practitioner. So how do you feel about your clients? Do you trust that they have their resources and capacity to heal? Do you trust their journey? The stronger your connection to source, the more trusting and accepting you will be of how the session goes. Now let's address a few things that can happen for practitioners. One is being overly compassionate. Oh, poor you. I feel so sorry this is happening to you. You don't really want to commiserate with them. You just really want to trust their journey. Yes, they might have 100 things on their plate, but they have the capacity and ability to do so, and you are going to help them with that. The other is watch your judgments. We all have judgments that come up. And what do we do when judgments come up? Well, let's just give a bit of a funny example. Let's say a young man comes to your session and says, well, I have three girlfriends and I really want to be a better lover so I can keep up with all three of them. So if you are a woman, obviously you're gonna say, oh my God, you're thinking about all these girlfriends and you have all these things in your mind. So, but what's the solution, right? Obviously, you acknowledge what's going on through your mind, and but you stay curious. You simply ask the client, so tell me more about it. How did you end up with three girlfriends? And it might be that the person might say, wow, I don't know. I've never had any attention. I grew up with three sisters. They never paid attention to me. They were mean to me. My mother locked me in the basement whenever I was a little bit out of line. So basically I've never, and now I don't know, three girls seem to love me. This is awesome. So you never really know what's going on or how this person ended up in this situation. So it's really important to stay curious. Let's give another example. You might be jealous of one of your clients. Let's say you're playing on stock market, you've just lost a bunch of money, and here your client shows up saying, wow, I just made 50K, I feel awesome. And you're like, wow, what's wrong with me? I haven't been able to do that. But then when you ask, so tell me more, the client might say, well, I've just lost, $250,000 last year, so this is just my way to make it back. You never really know. So I'd say keep in mind your judgments and ask, be curious. So hope this has been helpful to you, and I would like to end with a little bit of laughter. Let's move myself a little bit lower here. Okay, so here we go. A therapist suggests that a man needs to work on his constant need to please others. What was his reply? Take a guess. Okay, here we go. Sure, if it makes you happy. Okay, why was the mathematician told to see a therapist? Because he kept obsessing over his ex. And what profession truly enjoys fruitcakes? Psychologists. Well, I really hope you enjoyed the jokes and I hope you enjoy the presentation, and thank you so much for being here.
Let's open it up to questions before we let her skitter away. Is that okay?
Here we go. Stop share.
Anybody have any questions? Anybody have questions? Go for it. Don't everyone all go at once. No questions, no problem, but here's your chance. If you guys have questions, we're all here for you. So just want to let you guys know, congratulations on making it to our first Thursday without Steve. Steve was here earlier, but I think I was able to kick him out, so we're good. Let's see. Next week, I believe. Let's see. Next week we are Melinda will be leading. We're going to talk about the biology and neuroscience of belief, so that should be totally cool. The week after we are off, and Thursday, June 1st, we have a very special guest lecture. Does anybody ever heard of Kim Spillet? Going to be taking us into our shadow, exploring the dark side. So it's advanced, it's intense. If you're kind of dipping your toe in the new age water, stay home. This is meant for people that are really ready to embrace and explore the dark side, because as Carl Wolf used to say, over 90% of your power is locked up in your shadow. So that'll be a special one. And I think you guys will like Tenerd. He's different, but quite powerful. Any questions? Go for it. I'm checking the chat room. Any questions? Otherwise, let's give a big round of applause. Yeah, woo.
Thank
Excellent
you.
presentation. I did have just one quick question. You said at the beginning that coffee and tea do count as water intake.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Because I've heard it both ways.
Yeah, from what my
from different people.
is,
Some people will say don't count the coffee and tea and things that are caffeinated because it dehydrates you.
Well, I have a friend of mine is an MD, and he says it does count, even though you might eliminate some, it still counts as water intake. But obviously, it doesn't hurt to have 2-3 liters of water and then have extra tea, because that's not that much. That's how I'm going about it.
Okay.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, so this is more on from the perspective. I guess there's two different things we're looking at. One would be what's the strain on your kidneys.
Mm-hmm.
And I think obviously coffee, tea would put more strain on your kidneys because the process is more fluid. The other would be hydration in terms of getting water into the cells, the intracellular water, which is really precious. So I'm guessing that caffeinated beverages would not count towards hydration, but would count towards straining your kidneys. Would that be the correct way to think about it?
Yes, I would say so. But there's other theories that say, depending on the type of coffee that we drink, coffee has also certain qualities that we can benefit from. So, but definitely, depending on the person's genetic background, if you are not able to process well caffeine like I am, I can't drink much caffeine. Other people can drink 3 cups and they are fine. So it really, I think yes, I would not count the caffeinated beverages towards water, but otherwise the rest, soups would count, for example.
Okay.
Juices would count, something like this.
But drinking a lot of water sends you running to the bathroom a lot, so liquid intake in general, whether it has caffeine or not, it is still,
especially if you drink it very fast. Yes.
Then gradually, it's not as bad.
Yeah, that's why I think we need to make a distinction between fluid load versus hydration. Mm-hmm. One thing, I don't know if any of you has a solution for this. One of the things I'd love to find a way to understand, other than an intuitive reading, is how to measure the level of intracellular water in someone's body, because we need both. We need the intracellular water mostly to flush out toxins and keep things flowing, but we need to get enough water into the cells because that's what powers life. And a lot of people can't make that distinction. All they can count is the amount of liquid that goes down their throat, right? Anybody have any ideas, suggestions? I mean, obviously an intuitive reading. You could use muscle testing. I'm just wondering if there's other mechanisms, because it's not getting better hydrated. It's not always a matter of putting more fluid down your throat.
I understand
sometimes it
what
is,
you're saying about
but
the
sometimes it's not.
Intracellular and the cellular hydration. One thing, when I was donating blood a lot, one time,
like if you get a massage,
your blood moves around like sludge if you aren't well hydrated. I noticed one time giving blood that mine was taking a long time to come out, and some man came in and he was finished in 10 minutes. And I asked the nurse about it, and she said, drink a bottle of water before you donate blood. And no kidding, my blood came out, all of it in like 10 minutes when I was well hydrated. So your blood thickens.
To drink at least a big bottle of water.
Yeah.
Yep. And if you can soak in a hot tub or something before you give blood and put a heat pack on your arm, that helps too. I have collapsing veins and it's a bitch to get blood out of me. So I've learned a lot of these little tricks. That
Regarding
makes a big difference. Yeah,
hydration,
you have to drink at least 16 ounces of water.
okay. So regarding hydration,
Yeah, go
I
ahead, Melinda.
think that beyond a certain point, no matter how much you drink, your body can't take up the water, so you cannot get hydrated unless you have electrolytes in the water. So you need the right salts, and pretty much you need ions in the water and potentially sugars. This is where the sports drinks come from. But the easiest sport drink is, a hydrating drink is a little bit of salt and sugar in your water, something sweet. And then because simply...
Yeah, Gatorade's great if you don't mind a giant dose of sugar, right?
Yeah, somebody, Ron said coconut water. Yes, coconut water is an ideal electrolyte. Yes. Yeah, and I think that the coconut water is very similar to the saline solution that our blood is, the 0.9% saline. Okay.
Awesome. Any other questions or shares? Otherwise, we'll wrap it up for today. All right, awesome. We are officially at the end. Thank you to everyone who joined us, especially our presenters. If anybody, does anybody want the slides? If you do, I'll arrange that. Otherwise, we're good. All right, awesome. So we'll see you all same time next week. Melinda will lead us on the biology and our science of belief. Until then, goodbye, take care, and namaste.
It will actually just be the neuroscience, but never.